Wes, what do you recall about the first time that you encountered the work of Joseph Cornell?
I don't know, Jasper, if I can remember when I first encountered the work of Joseph Cornell. What I remember quite profoundly was, I want to say, there's one piece that lives at the Menil. There's a few boxes at the Menil, 4 or 6 or something like that, but a lot more. There's more. There's some that live on display. There's one that I feel has always been out. That is a kind of, that looks like the hotel in the Grand Budapest Hotel.
It's called Palace.
Palace, that's it. And that one, I think it probably is, why in the movie we ended up making a miniature. We made a sort of a shadow box of this hotel that is the image of the hotel, because we didn't find a real hotel. We used things from all sorts of other ones. We made a sort of fantasy hotel. But I think this Cornell had a lot to do with not just the image itself, but the fact that it was a miniature. Right. But I remember Walter Hopps put on a big retrospective like in the 90s, like 97-ish or something like that. And that was, to me, then I really noticed this body of work, or what these are. And they're artworks that aren't quite like anybody else's before. And Cornell, like any artist, the motivation behind the work is, I want to make something now. For most artists, I think that's what it is. I want to make something. And his have such a tactile thing about them. The process of the creation is sort of right up front, and it has something of the innocence and the purity and the drive of a child's artwork. But there's a special sophistication because you see what he's thinking about and drawing on and inventing, and there's something poetic in every single one of these boxes. And each one is this sort of magical fantasy that is international, sort of. It's kind of a big world view from a little room. It must be from a small room in Queens.
That was number one?
No. Everything wants to be closer. We want to see them from here. They can go. The closest one can go underneath Hotel du Nord.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the exhibition. So we began talking about doing an exhibition like this probably a couple of years ago, and I searched back and listened to one of your voice messages a couple of days ago, and it was the moment that you came up with the idea of the workshop. And you said, why don't we try to recreate a version of Cornell's studio workshop with his shelves, materials, and ingredients, authentic, aged, highly detailed, using as many real things as possible, with boxes on display among them, like building a movie set at Cornell's house.
The images of his studio are wildly entertaining, and this studio, with the greatest respect, is like a wonderful poubelle. It's filled with all his stuff, and it's filled with what he used to make his boxes and his work. It's a carpentry studio, it's a collage studio, and it's a dustbin. I think the way we've ended up installing it, first of all, our job with this, it was essentially to create shop windows. It's an intimate piece, even though it's right on a boulevard in the middle of on an avenue in the middle of Paris. Well, sometimes a great thing for an installation is abundance, and his workshop is like that. There's a lot to look at and study, and things that can lead to other things. And I think the way we've situated it, we take the completed works, the finished works, and we foreground them very assertively, but we can see them in the context of where they came from. Once we sort of had the idea of what this was going to be, in particular the textures that it wanted, the first person I thought of was Catherine Little, Catherine, I usually call her, because she's French and English. Right. She's scenic. She works on my films for many years. And she's the one who, if something's broken, she'll trompe l'oeil over it to make it work so we can keep shooting. But in the meantime, she's aging things she's creating water damage and cracks in the floor and faking things. And then we have our sign painters who worked on the French Dispatch, and then they later worked on, they worked on Phoenicians, they worked on Asteroid City too, I think. They've worked with us for years. They're two great Vincent and Francois. These two guys are experts with text signage, with on-set new artwork. And because the Cornell studio is filled with his labeling, in particular, I immediately thought of them because his hand is visible in every single thing you see, and they are guys who can absorb a personality, a character, a hand, and revive it. Because our studio is not a direct recreation of his, it's an interpretation of his, filled with a lot of his own stuff, by the way, and our version of his stuff, but it's a new thing. I think when somebody goes and stands in front of these windows and looks in, there is a density of creativity and there's a lot to experience and take in that's all tied together. And I think it kind of comes across as one thing. Together, we've made something that we didn't have the slightest idea what it would be, which I think is a bit like a theater experience, except no play. And then, at the one moment when you turn on the lights, we can switch to the tungsten color in the boxes. And now it's the night switch. That's the night switch. Yeah, great. I think there's an aspect of it where you've got this little confined space, and the people seeing it are standing out on a sidewalk, right below the Place Vendôme. But when you're in that space, you don't want to break the spell of being in Cornell's, in our version of Cornell studio. So we did do a few things that I think helped enhance that, which is there, for instance, there's a window in there that looks into an office up above. There's a staircase. And we use the window to suggest the next room of Cornell's house. We have another space area where we use where we make a fake window to suggest the view to his garden, and we even have an image of the garden. And we just tried to suggest the continuation of the studio a bit, and to prevent seeing anything that isn't part of the spell we mean to cast. Even the ceiling, for instance, is made to be, it's a scenic concoction. The whole exhibition is like a Cornell box. It's a jewel box to show his work. They don't know what they're looking at, but anybody who knows Cornell it will start to puzzle this out and say, oh my God. And anybody who doesn't will say, what are these extraordinary little boxes? These aren't just good, these are great. Yes.